Everyone assumed Hyun had everything, but the book in his hand suggested a different story, a handsome heir from one of Korea's most powerful families. He read in silence, though his mind kept drifting to Suji and Lee. Suddenly, Suji slid over and sat beside Hyun's girlfriend. The girlfriend, a well-known lawyer, leaned in and said life is driven by fate, and that ultimately he wouldn't want her. The girl broke down, demanding to know why he'd hurt her, while Suji remained close, steadying her. Suji comforted her as Lee and Hyun watched from a distance. We learn Hyun secretly resents his father and plans to undermine the man who recently rescued the family company. Later at school, the three friends sit together, tension humming beneath their calm, joking around until one of the students came and gave them the exam results. And as soon as Hyun held the paper and tried to fold it, the student quickly pacified him and asked him to study harder so he would not disappoint his deceased mother. And the moment the student felt that the others would turn against him, he backed away, apologized to them, and left. And immediately, Suji grabbed the nearest trash can and threw it at him and told him that she was also sorry. And the next day at a graduation ceremony, Suji spoke with one of the teachers who received a promotion that day, but the man kept provoking her and brought up her father, who was imprisoned, and praised her mother because she managed a respectable hospital, which annoyed Suji. And before she replied with anything, Hyun appeared and drove the teacher away, and at the same time, Lee entered the school and met a little girl and the school principal in front of the elevator. And to mess with the principal, he and the little girl entered the elevator and left her to wait. And the moment the graduation ceremony began, we learned that the group wanted to expose the promoted teacher. And indeed, Lee entered the projection room and played a video on the screen in front of all the students, and the whole hall erupted in laughter and mockery. And quickly, the principal ordered her secretary to go check what happened. And he indeed arrived and stopped Lee, and we saw the group as they walked down the school stairs until they were stopped by their classmate Shama, who thanked them for what they did to the teacher and asked them to take a picture. And indeed they took the picture and continued on their way. And as soon as they exited the building, Lee started joking with them and provoked Suji until she hit him. But the moment she caught sight of her boyfriend Kim getting out of a car, she changed her demeanor from angry to calm and elegant and went to him. And at the same time, Shama was with her classmate Tae-hee in a restaurant and talked about what happened at school. And in the middle of her words, Tae-hee interrupted her and asked her if she liked someone from that group. So Shama felt shy and told her about the matter and how inadequate she felt because the boy was very handsome and clever and she feared rejection. But Tae-hee reassured her that she was sweet and had no flaws. And at night, Suji went to a party with Kim, and we learned that his entire family consisted of prominent lawyers. Then the focus returned to the prominent people, whose harsh words matched their status, and they spoke about Suji in a very negative way. So when she tried to clarify that she was Kim's girlfriend, Kim stopped her and asked her to talk on the side, and he explained to her that they were merely friends, and that if he called her his girlfriend in front of his family, he would lose their respect, because it was inappropriate for someone like him to love a girl whose father was imprisoned and whose mother was merely a hospital director. And naturally, these words deeply embarrassed Suji, so she left and went to her mother at the hospital to ask if she forced her to date Kim so he could help them with the hospital's legal cases after divorcing her father. And when her mother tried to explain that life was based on mutual interests, Suji felt heavily deceived and realized her self-worth had hit rock bottom. So she left her mother and walked out. And the next day, Hun returned home and found his father waiting for him, who explained that he had 1 week to find a new house. And before Hun could complain about anything, his father made him open a paper on the table to discover that he was not the legitimate son of the family. And naturally, Hun could not bear what he read and went up the stairs to look at a portrait of himself with his mother before leaving the apartment. And on the street, he sat next to Tae-hee without knowing her while waiting for the bus, as he held the legitimacy document and folded it into a paper airplane. And he remembered how his mother taught him that if anything bothered him, he should fold it into a paper airplane and let it fly in the air. And when he threw it, it landed next to Tae-hee, who picked up the paper, and before she could return it, Hyun went and boarded the bus. And while Hyun was about to pay the driver, Tae-hee paid for both of them instead. And as soon as they sat down, Tae-hee tried to return his paper to him, but he refused and explained to her that this paper contained his final words. And before Tae-hee could mumble anything, he placed the paper inside her book and asked her to throw it away without opening it. And indeed, she took the book, moved to another seat, and slept the entire way. She reached her station and quickly ran to exit, but an envelope fell from her. And when Hun picked it up, he noticed it was an invitation to a pottery exhibition. And later, Tae-hee was at home scrolling through Instagram, and she found a picture of Shama with the group, and she noticed Hun and searched for his name until Shama entered the room. She looked sad after fighting with her mother, and at the same time, Hyun sat in Lee's house, and they talked about Suji's mother mother's conference and how they had to attend it with her, and Lee offered Hyun clean clothes. And at night, Tae-hee went to the same conference and found Kim in front of her, and we learned that they were old friends until Tae-hee traveled abroad with her father after he divorced her mother. And as soon as they entered the party, Kim looked at her with love as he spoke, and Suji stood far away and noticed this interaction, so she kept Tae-hee in mind. As soon as the party ended, the group gathered at one table and talked about Kim and Tae-hee and how to ruin the engagement plans. That did not even start between them, and Suji tried to make Hyun get close to Tae-hee and force her to refuse. But Hyun was upset, so he refused, and because anyone who crossed Suji never won, he received a message from the family secretary stating that his father attended the conference. So he became more upset, turned around, and left. And the moment Hyun returned to the hall, he found his father and Suji's mother announcing their engagement, and everyone celebrated the news except for the group, as each one looked at the other without understanding anything at all. The three gathered and tried to understand what happened, but Kim interrupted them and joked around. But Hyun grabbed him and decided to beat him up, and before he did anything, he let him go and walked away. And at the same time, Tae-hee approached a pottery exhibition near the conference and noticed her mother, so she tried to leave, but her aunt noticed her and asked her to come inside. And when she sat with her mother, the conflict between them became clear, and how her mother caused their family to fall apart and made her father leave the country, so she could not stay any longer, and left her while feeling extremely sad. But as she hurried out of the building to cross the road, a car came and almost hit her, but the driver swerved onto the road instead, and the moment he stepped out, we realized it was Hun, and he started arguing with her because she did not pay attention to the road. And after he took his anger out on her, he found her holding on to him and begging him not to leave her. And then we discovered that Tae-hee experienced an accident before, and the driver left her and ran away. So Hyun immediately gave her his name and number and explained to her that he took care of everything and she had nothing to worry about, until he received a call asking him to come quickly. And we saw Suji holding broken glass in her hand, threatening her mother that she might herself. And Suji kept shouting until Hyun arrived and calmed her down. And the next day, Hyun's father went to meet the head of the family company, who was Hyun's grandmother. And when he sat down, she asked him about her grandson. So he explained to her that he went on a school trip and could not come that day. And she emphasized that he had to take care of him because he was the only legitimate heir to the family. And naturally, he listened and did not want to tell her anything. And later, Han passed by his father's company and noticed a large vase his mother used to adore, and remembered when she told him that it made her feel like she looked at a painting. And in the group's secret hideout, they gathered, and we learned that Lee's family was very strict and beat him up severely because he went out without telling them where he went. But Suji brought him some women's makeup to cover the bruises on his face, and they talked about the problems in each of their lives until Han suggested to Suji that they marry and ruin their father's lives. But Suji got upset by his words and fought with him, and to escalate the matter further in their minds, Lee decided to leave and went downstairs, pretending he had work to finish, and left Suji and Hyun alone to discuss their fake marriage. And as soon as he stepped out of the elevator, he canceled his ride and went back up, only to find them sitting and talking about Tae-hee and how Hyun planned to make her fall in love with him. And on Hun's way to his new house, he received a message stating that his mother's old car officially belonged to him. So he went to pick it up and drove to his new house. And the next day, he started organizing his belongings, found Tae-hee's envelope, and went to draw her on his apartment's glass window. And then he got ready and styled his hair and clothes to go meet her. And when he arrived, he brought some flowers to apologize to her. But Shama's mother opened the door, looked surprised, and asked him why he came. So he covered it up and told her that he brought these flowers specifically for her. And at that time, Shama returned with Tae-hee, who noticed what happened and tried to pull Shama away. But Hyun interrupted them and explained that he wanted to speak with Tae-hee for a while. So Shama asked Tae-hee to step aside because she wanted to speak with Hyun herself. And indeed, she stood with him and asked him why he brought flowers for her mother, but he refused to answer her. So she got upset, sat on the ground, and cried like a child. So he left her and walked away. And Tae-hee noticed this and felt surprised by his cold reaction. And at night she called. Shama called Tae-hee and asked her to stay away from this boy because he was untrustworthy. And naturally, Tae-hee had no problem with that because she thought Shama actually loved Hyun. And the next day, Hun stood in the exact same place where he first met Tae-hee until she arrived, and he played dumb. And as soon as she sat down and tried to design a building, Hyun tried his luck and looked at her. So she got annoyed, stood up, and boarded the bus. But he ran after her and paid the fare for both of them to return the favor, since he did not accept anything from anyone, and they remained standing for a while until Hyun sat down and left Tae-hee standing. And then a strange man boarded the bus and harassed Tae-hee So the heroic Hyun stood up and completely threw him out of the bus. And we learned that Hyun actually hired this man. And to remind her of himself, he told her that this was the second time they met on a ride, and he greeted her with a very old-fashioned gesture. And later, Hyun sat with the rest of his group as they thought of ways that Hyun could use to get closer to Tae-hee. And amidst all this, Lee decided to film their plan as a souvenir. And on the same day, Hyun went to the library to meet Tae-hee, and as soon as she spotted his face through the window, he played dumb, so she ignored him and focused on her tasks. And then he entered and slept, so she came and asked him what he wanted from her, and he asked her to go out for a nice lunch like her. And while they ate, Hyun tried to lighten the mood with a few words, but Tae-hee shocked him with the information she had about him and how he was a problematic and troubled person, and she left him and walked away. And at that time, Suji was at the house of one of the major families to tutor their daughter Mari, and she sat with the mother and agreed with her on everything. And when she entered Mari's room, she noticed that the girl basically had no friends, and in the middle of their session, they were interrupted by a delivery of baked goods that Kim brought for Mari. And then Suji felt that Kim would soon come and propose to Mari, so she became furious and annoyed, but she forced herself to remain patient because she could not react impulsively to everything. At night, Tae-hee started thinking about Hyun and decided to check his message, but suddenly she found him calling for 3 seconds and hanging up multiple times to drive her crazy and make her think of him. But she completely ignored him and left him without calling him back. And the next day, Hyun woke up, looked at his phone, and did not find a single message from her. So he called her again and let it ring 3 times before hanging up, which annoyed Tae-hee, and she considered calling him back to scold him, but she ignored the matter. And later, Tae-hee went with Shama to get a haircut. And on Tae-hee's way to the elderly care center, Hyun appeared and told her that her new hairstyle suited her very well. So she left him without replying and boarded the bus. So he boarded with her, and when they got off, she found him still following her and asked him what he wanted from her now. So he used the magic word and told her that he missed her. And before she could reply, the nun in charge of the facility appeared and made Hun go with one of the staff members to bring the food and prepare it. And he stayed there until he called Suji and started complaining to her about the work he did, but she ignored him and ordered him to focus on the plan until 2 elderly people interrupted him and asked him not to hurt Tae-hee because she was an innocent girl. And as soon as they walked away, another old woman appeared and asked him to draw on her plate, and he did not hesitate and actually did so. And then she kept crying and asked him if he remembered her. And at that moment, he did not understand anything until the facility manager walked in, and we learned that the woman hallucinated and thought Hun was her deceased husband. And before Hun left, he approached her and told her that he would definitely return to her again. And at night, while walking home with Tae-hee, she explained to him that she could not love him because her friend Shama had a crush on him, but he asked her about her own feelings. And before she replied, he quickly ran away. And before he went home, he called Suji and learned from her that Shama actually had her eyes on Lee and that they sat together at a party. So he realized his situation was secure, and he went to cook a nice meal for himself and to make the food perfect. He called Tae-hee and asked her for advice, so she decided to tell him the steps while both of them cooked the same meal. And at the same time, Suji did not enjoy sitting with Lee, so she got up and left. And then a man appeared and harassed her, so Lee quickly came and hit him. And later we saw Lee's face completely bruised as he explained to Suji that he could not control himself and had to hit him. And in Tae-hee's house, she brought up the outing with Shama, and Shama confessed that she loved Lee but felt confused by his actions, which shocked Tae-hee because she thought her friend loved Hyun. And later we saw Hyun's father sitting with Tae-hee's mother, who asked him what brought him there today. So he explained that he missed her very much and had things to say. And at that moment, Suji stood far away and noticed the betrayal happening against her mother. And we discovered that Hyun's father originally invited them to a casual family dinner. And as soon as he returned to the room they were in, Suji subtly confronted him without being explicit, and she took her belongings and left. And in the secret hideout, the 3 gathered, and Hyun bought flowers for Suji. And at the same time, Tae-hee was with Shama, and they agreed to call Suji to find out if Hyun actually loved Tae-hee or if he would play her. But Suji clearly showed jealousy and told them that Hyun did not care much. And naturally, Tae-hee felt upset and went to sleep, while our group continued their night until Suji sat on the handmade plate that Hyun drew on, so he got very angry with her and they fought. So Suji left them and walked away. And the next day, Hun sat trying to fix the plate by moving it left and right and gluing its pieces together, but it was completely useless. So he decided to pass by Tae-hee at the care facility, but she gave him the cold shoulder until they entered and set up the celebration. And each of the elderly people received their pottery gift. And the moment it was the old woman's turn to receive her plate, Hun asked Tae-hee to step aside and explain to her what happened. So she got angry at him him, went to the lady and asked her to give them some time until the plate arrived. And before the woman cried and caused a scene in front of the whole facility, Hyun went and carried her on his back and walked her around the entire facility. And when Hyun returned, he found Tae-hee fixing the plate from scratch. But she threw a few hurtful words at him about how irresponsible he was and how he failed to take care of his belongings. So he got upset and walked away. And the next day, Hyun sat feeling depressed about what happened that day until Lee came and cheered him up a little bit. And at the same time, Tae-hee was at the care facility, and the people there showed her a picture of Hyun as a child visiting them with his mother. And then Tae-hee felt guilty and regretted the way she treated Hyun. But the priest came and informed her that he came to the place, fixed the plate she made yesterday, and left without anyone noticing. And at night, Tae-hee returned home and packed her belongings because she planned to move out of that house. And she thought about the words she should say to Hyun as an apology. And at the same time, Hyun was in the car with Suji, and he apologized for getting angry at her on the day of the plate incident. And they made up, and the next day, Hyun got ready to take Tae-hee to her new house. And he went to take the heavy items from her hands to carry them up himself. And he also made her get into his car. But as soon as they arrived, they discovered that the landlord said her reservation for the place was canceled and someone else rented it instead. So she sat as usual, crying and lamenting without knowing what she should do. So Hyun suggested that she come with him. And as soon as he went, the police arrested Hyun and accused him of driving a car that did not belong to him. So he told Tae-hee that the apartment upstairs belonged to him, and the passcode for the apartment was exactly her phone number to show her how much he cared about her details. And when she entered, she found Hun's belongings, his picture with his mother, and also the drawing he drew for her. And she quickly went to the police station and legally explained to them how the car rightfully belonged to Hun after his mother's death. And indeed, the officer was convinced and let Hyun go. And then Hyun accidentally discovered that his mother's car had no accidents registered to it. So he felt surprised and asked the officer about the matter because he thought that his mother died in an accident. And the officer immediately explained to him that it was impossible for this car to have been in an accident because all accidents were registered. And before they spoke further, the family secretary arrived and told Hyun that he would handle this problem. And in the supermarket, Tae-hee talked about her father and explained that he loved her mother, but her mother left him, which deeply affected his mental state. And in the middle of this, she brought up her feelings for Hyun, and naturally, he felt extremely happy and asked her to get into the car with him so he could go to her. And on their way, she remembered a birthday wish and felt it was coming true. And as soon as they returned home, we discovered that Tae-hee rented the apartment opposite to Hyun's, and she talked with the person handing over the apartment. And before he could say that the entire building belonged to Hyun, Hyun grabbed him and made it clear to him that he did not want her to know. And Hyun went inside to change his clothes and came out to help Tae-hee, so she fixed the apartment lights. And amidst the work and joking, Hun pulled the ladder and ruined a part of the wall, so she got angry at him. This greatly annoyed Hyun and made him gather his things and the tools he used to help her and leave. And the next day, he brought her some items and placed them in front of her apartment. And when she came to talk to him, he was shocked by her beauty and completely spaced out until he realized where he was, apologized, and entered his apartment again. And later at school, Suji walked down and saw Tae-hee and Shama sitting together joking, so she spitefully approached them, sat next to. Shama asked her to attend a party with her and apologized to Tae-hee because she only had one ticket. And amidst the conversation, Hyun arrived in his car and picked up Suji and Shama without paying any attention to Tae-hee, and he stayed with them until he dropped them off at the fashion exhibition, and he left them and drove away. And at Tae-hee's workplace, she searched for the building that she lived in and learned that Hyun was its owner. And when she returned, she found him inviting her for food, so she reluctantly agreed, and they sat together. And every time he did something with the food, she criticized him and made him miserable. And by chance, while she rummaged through his drawer, she found her tools, so she took them without speaking to him and left. And the next day, in their secret hideout, they discussed going on an outing together. The group planned to reunite and refresh things all over again, so Hyun agreed on the condition that it would be just the three of them. But at that time, Lee and Suji explained to him that Shama would most likely be with them, and possibly Tae-hee as well. And on the street, Tae-hee noticed Hyun. She mocked him for being a thief, so he returned to her and asked her about what she said, but she ignored him and continued on her way. And as she walked, he noticed that there was something wrong with her leg. And at the same time, Shama went downstairs and found her mother with a severe stomach ache. The pain was unbearable, so she called Hyun and explained to him that she would stay with her mother these days. This was because she was sick and unable to move, and she asked him to go pick up Tae-hee from the street instead of making her take a long trip to her house for nothing. So Shama called Tae-hee and told her that Hyun would come to her her. And before she said anything, Hyun arrived. He asked her to get in, and after a brief argument, Hyun did not leave her alone until she got into the car with him. And as soon as they reached the new place, they entered to organize and tidy up the place. And when Lee arrived with Suji, they noticed Hyun's overly nice treatment of Tae-hee, and they entered normally, greeted everyone, and Tae-hee went. She went to bring them something to drink as if she owned the place, and Suji took the opportunity and spoke to Hun with clear jealousy of Tae-hee. But he assured her that he followed her plan, and in the middle of the day, Suji noticed that Hyun and Tae-hee were together, so she went and bothered them. And at the dining table, everyone talked, and Tae-hee joked with everyone, which provoked Suji, so she replied to her in a way. That hurt her, and because Tae-hee was polite and did not want to talk back, she brought up Hyun's drawing and how beautiful it was. However, Suji explained to her that Hyun hated drawing and that she knew absolutely nothing about him. And while she tried to explain to them that he was a world-class painter, Hyun himself embarrassed her and asked her not to speak on his behalf again. So she felt sorry for herself, gathered her things, and left. Later, Tae-hee saw Hun standing with Suji as they talked very closely to each other. And naturally, like anyone in this situation, she felt jealous of her. But she refused to speak. So Hun went up to knock on her door, gave her juice, and asked her to take care of herself. And the next day, Hyun asked about Tae-hee, but Suji told him that she definitely ran away after what she heard yesterday. So he moved and looked at the refrigerator and found a thank you note from Tae-hee for the 2 nice days she spent at the place. And she explained that she was in a hurry and needed to leave, so Hyun moved. Hyun quickly went to find her, and we saw Tae-hee limping because of her injured leg as she sat and asked herself about the reason that made her involve herself with these people. And before she insulted any of them, Hyun arrived and asked her to get on his back because of her leg, and when she did that, she felt happy with this romance and forced him to take a picture with her. And she got off his back and continued walking. And when they reached the house, they sat, cooked, took pictures together, and talked about Hun's group and how they were friends for many years. And while he sat, he received a call from Suji. So he went immediately, and she told him that some people came and took Lee. So he explained to her that he was definitely punished and his family wanted to teach him a lesson for running away from home. And before he finished his words, Suji's mother arrived, checked on him, talked to him, and suggested that she buy him a new car instead of the car he drove. So he explained to her that this car belonged to his mother and he could not let it go. And at that moment she felt embarrassed, apologized, left him, and walked away. And at night, Tae-hee went down with Shama for a walk, and Shama talked about our group and how when she sat with them, she always talked about Tae-hee, and this made Tae-hee completely confused about why she did that. And she sat on a chair in the street and asked herself what forced her to live like this. And she wished that Hyun was present in front of her right then, and indeed he was beside her and heard everything she said. And when she opened her eyes and found him in front of her, she felt shy and wanted to hit Shama for not alerting her. The next day, Hyun went to the police station and found one of the officers telling him that no accident happened on the road during that period, except for an accident involving a hit and run on a female student. And it was not his mother. So he thanked the officer while feeling surprised, and he went to pass by his old house, remembered his mother, and decided to see the shop where Tae-hee worked to entertain himself a little. And he sat there and kept annoying her until Kim arrived. So Tae-hee went to sit with him. They talked normally while completely ignoring Hun, who sat mumbling annoying words to make him leave. Indeed, he got up and Kim started talking about Hun's father's marriage. So Hun let the night pass and kept bringing up the fact that his house was right next to Tae-hee's and that they were neighbors to annoy them more, until Tae-hee replied herself that she had to leave now with Kim because she had a job interview at his company, and at night she actually went with him but discovered that he wanted them to go out alone, meaning there was no job at all. So she got upset and left him alone, and on her way home she found some kids whose ball got stuck in the tree. So she tried to get it down and climbed the tree, but Hyun appeared and showed her that those with brains were better than those with muscles, and he knocked the ball down with another ball. And when they returned home, she looked at some drawings Hyun made when he was young, and she found a picture of his mother wearing a necklace, which she liked very much. And in the next picture, Suji was everywhere. So she got upset and realized her conscience, and she decided to gather her things and return to her apartment, and she quickly called her father to show him the place and its beauty. And in the middle of this, they brought up the topic of love and its beauty, and the father explained to her how beautiful and great love was. So she remembered her moments with Hyun and cried. And at the same time, Hyun was in his apartment looking at the papers Tae-hee left, and he noticed Suji's drawings. So he quickly moved to her apartment and found her sad, and she told him that she could no longer continue what they they were doing and felt he hid something. And when he tried to reason with her, she made him understand that she knew how he felt about Suji, so he could not reply to her and stood in front of the door. And later, Hyun entered his room and erased the message he drew for Tae-hee. And Tae-hee also deleted the pictures she took with Hyun. And then Hyun went down to a restaurant and sat there until his group approached him. And as soon as they entered, he asked Suji about what she tried to clarify to Tae-hee when they were together. So she told him that they were lovers, not him and Tae-hee. So he got annoyed with her, but she left him and walked away. And when Lee went after her, he talked to her about the offer she proposed to him and his marriage proposal to her. But she refused him. So she tried to shut Lee up with a few words and walked away. And at that time, Tae-hee tried to call Hun, but he could not hold himself together and fell to the ground. And the next day, Tae-hee woke up, searched through her belongings, and found Hun's paper. So she decided to open it and discovered that he was not the legitimate son of his family. And in the hospital, Lee sat with Hyun and showed him the video where he fell. And he explained to him that if his face was not blurred like that, he would have been in big trouble with his father. And when he got up and walked around the hospital, he remembered the days he spent there with his mother and how Suji's mother was responsible for her condition. And because of that, he passed by Suji's mother and asked her about what happened to his mother in the accident. So she explained to him that she hit the student and their family did everything because she was sick and they did not want her to spend her last days in prison. And amidst their conversation, Suji entered, and Hun clearly looked broken and sad. So he excused himself and left. And later he sat on his bed, remembered his mother, and cried for her. And suddenly Tae-hee entered to return his phone, and she found him crying. So she returned the phone to him, wished him well, and before she left, he comforted her with a few words, put Suji in the friend zone for her, and convinced her to sit with him for a while. And in this nice gathering, Tae-hee talked about how she got hit by a car a few years ago, which severely affected her leg. And to make her forget, he gave her the necklace he drew in his mother's picture. And the next day, Hun went out with Tae-hee from the hospital until they sat down to joke around. And Hun went back to drawing Tae-hee on the glass window. And we saw Suji sitting alone as she found Lee sending them a location to meet up. And as soon as she went, she found everyone gathered in a restaurant Lee opened to make money, so his family would not kick him out. And everyone gathered and joked until Hun went out, stood with Shama, and asked her not to spread news about his relationship with Tae-hee to anyone for a while. And later, Suji went to stand next to Hyun, and they brought up their fathers. And they apologized to each other, and things between them became completely fine. And the next day, Tae-hee came and woke Hyun up to take him to a place that needed a painter. And she told him that it was a nice and beautiful job, wished him luck, threw him out, and walked with Shama, who noticed that Tae-hee's mother was present. So she brought her daughter to her and ran away. And when Tae-hee stood looking at her mother, her aunt came and offered to take them out to eat. And on their way to her mother, Suji stood far away, noticed Tae-hee's mother, and recognized her. And as soon as they entered the restaurant, Tae-hee clearly looked uncomfortable, and she kept provoking her mother with words until her mother got fed up, left the place, and walked away. And on her way, Hyun sat drawing, so she watched him. And at night, Hyun met Suji and talked about what he did all day. And then she asked him to drop her off at the hospital. And at the moment they went there were protests in front of the hospital against a type of chemotherapy. And as soon as Suji's mother came out, they threw eggs at her. So Hyun moved quickly and pulled Suji away from the situation, because if her mother saw her, she would definitely feel more broken. And before they continued throwing eggs at Suji's mother, Hyun's family secretary arrived and asked the hospital director to go inside. And with this tense atmosphere, Suji felt that all this happened because of Hyun's father, and she asked Hyun to marry her to stop their parents' marriage. But Hyun refused and made her understand that he no longer wanted this. And before he left her, she told him about the time she saw his father with another woman, and out of extreme tension, he grabbed her and tried to find out who this woman was, but in a way that showed he only cared about himself. So she got upset with him, left him, and walked away. And when Hyun returned home, he found Tae-hee waiting for him, so he sat with her. They cooked, completely relaxed, and went up to the roof to look at the stars. And they talked about zodiac signs and how they changed with the changing seasons. And at the same time, Lee went out with Suji, and they noticed Hyun's father and Tae-hee's mother, which confirmed all of Suji's suspicions. And Hyun spent his entire night imagining Tae-hee's face to draw her, so he went to her and asked her to smile so he could draw her. And both of them kept laughing. And the next day, Hyun went to his father's office to meet him, and his father clearly looked very angry because of the video he appeared in. But Hyun did not accept the insult any longer and informed his father that he could expose him and the company and say that he still met his first love in secret until now. And this made his father. His father got angry, threw papers at his face. And then Suji's mother entered the room and de-escalated the situation. At that moment, Hun left the office, and in the restaurant where Tae-hee worked, she met Kim and realized that he was the reason behind the spread of Hun's video, so she asked him to stay away from her completely, left him, walked away, and when she returned home, she found Hyun coming inside, and the apartment was so messy no one could walk in it. So Hyun sacrificed his time for her and cleaned the dumpster that she lived in, and when he finished, he found her asleep, so he covered her up and left, and he only waited a few hours before waking her up again to go jogging with him and move her body a bit, and they kept running until she got completely exhausted. And while they sat and talked, a ball came flying very fast, and it almost hit Hyun's head, but Tae-hee saved him and injured her hand, so he took her back home and treated her while they joked around. And in Lee's restaurant, he joked with Suji until a conference appeared on the television, showing her mother responding to the accusations of the people who threw eggs at her. And Suji clearly looked sad and felt that her mother worked for the benefit of the family of Hyun, so she got upset, got up, and walked away. And later we saw her in their secret hideout, where Hyun entered and apologized for what happened recently, and they went back to talking like friends without any problems again. And the next day, Hyun went out with Tae-hee because she went to the railway to prepare a college project. So he sat next to her and imagined himself drawing her, and all night they kept taking pictures and joking until she asked him about his father. So he changed the subject and explained that everything was written in the paper he gave her the first time they met, and immediately she also changed the subject and told him that she brought him a gift, and the gift was going to a new restaurant they never tried before. But Hyun got sick from eating too much, and they had to stay in the same place for another day. And the next day, he quickly went out to style his hair and get breakfast for Tae-hee, and from the beginning of the day, they ate here and there. And while they walked, a car passed by and almost hit Tae-hee, but Hyun saved her. So she started telling him about her old accident and how she got severely hurt because of it. But Hyun listened to her words and strongly connected them to his mother's death and realized she might be the one who caused the accident with Tae-hee. So he got upset, but Tae-hee noticed him, approached him, and apologized if this reminded him of his mother. So he explained to her that nothing was wrong and she should ignore it. And he took her, and they walked away. As soon as they returned home, Hyun entered to get something from Tae-hee's room and found his inheritance paper still with her. And when she approached him, she noticed what he held in his hand and explained to him that she actually read it. And with his eyes full of tears, he told her it was not a problem and excused himself to leave the house. And on his way out, he dropped a cup, bent down to pick it up, and left. So Tae-hee approached the door and tried to talk about what happened and explained that she did not mean to upset him at all. And he stood behind the door, barely holding back his tears. But he decided to open the door and asked her to leave him alone for a while. And the next day, Hyun went down to the street and met Tae-hee's mother while she looked at his painting and praised it. And amidst her words, she asked him about the girl he loved. So he told her that there were some problems because he hid information from her. So she advised him that if he intended to stay with her, he had to tell her every single detail so they could stay together through good times and bad times. And later, Hyun went to the group's hideout, called the police officer he knew, and asked him about what happened to the girl who got hit. So the officer told him that she recovered and was probably in college now. And as soon as he hung up the call, Lee entered and asked him if he was still interested in marrying Suji. So Hyun assured him that this matter ended for him a long time ago. And amidst their conversation, Lee held the camera. They used to film their plan to steal Tae-hee from Kim to destroy him. And in the end, Lee told him to do whatever he wanted because no one could stop him. Before he finished his words, Suji entered and sat joking with the two of them until they had a serious talk. And Suji asked him about Tae-hee and what Hyun's true intentions were. So he explained to her that he had to end everything. And in the morning, Hyun came downstairs and met Tae-hee, and she kept apologizing for her rudeness until he silenced her and offered to drop her off at her college. And as soon as she agreed, they walked down together. And after he dropped her off, he went to his mother's grave and sat talking to her with his eyes full of tears. And he asked her to forgive him for what he planned to do today. And when night fell, he stood somewhere until Suji arrived and talked with him about what would happen until Lee arrived, and they continued their plan. And then Shama and Tae-hee walked in on them, and we saw Hyun struggling to say a few words as he noticed that Tae-hee wore his mother's necklace. And as soon as he pulled himself together, he told her that he did not want to stay with her, that he felt uncomfortable, and that he never wanted to see her again. And due to the harshness of his words, Tae-hee could not take it anymore. So she left and walked away. And on her way, she felt that everything was a lie and that she was heavily deceived during this past period of her life. And the moment she arrived home, she found Hyun in a car and tried to talk to him, but she could not catch him. So she sat crying with a broken heart, went up to her house, remembered the sweet days they spent together, and continued crying. And the next day, Tae-hee woke up while she could not even look in the mirror or eat a single bite. And she got dressed and went to college. And at the same time, Han Hun sat feeling sad and looking at Taehee's drawings, and in the group's hideout, Hyun met Suji and Lee joined them too, and we learned that what happened last night was part of Hun's plan to find out who his father's mistress was, and he discovered that she managed a pottery shop, so he felt that's something wrong, and Suji interrupted and offered him to bother his father and his mistress by destroying the daughter of his mistress. But Lee stopped her and did not let her say the girl's name, who was Taehee, so Hyun took the papers concerning Taehee's mother and left looking clearly tense and worried, and we saw Taehee talking to Mari's mother, and that she would officially become Mari's math tutor, and indeed she sat next to her and started tutoring her, and later Taehee was in the restaurant, and she found her mother coming in, and she sat talking to her for a bit, and we discovered that her mother brought her a gift, and she talked to her for a bit and invited her to pass by her at the exhibition she would hold later. Before she left, she hugged her and patted her back, and at the same time, Hyun sat with the family secretary and learned from him that the accident that happened to his mother was because she was on her way to meet that same woman who owned the pottery shop, and on his way home, he met Taehee and kept following her with his eyes full of tears, and he went up to the roof to look at the stars alone, and as soon as he felt the necklace that reminded him of his mother and Taehee, he got upset and took it off, and the next day, Taehee dressed up and got ready to go to college, and on the stairs she met Hun, but she pretended not to see him and continued on her way. In Hyun's father's company, he sat with Suji, and she talked to him about wanting to marry his son and continuing their education abroad, but he rejected her words, so she threatened him with his betrayal of her mother, and he clearly looked worried, but he tried to calm her down by saying he would talk to her mother about this matter. At night, Taehee entered Lee's restaurant with some of her friends, and they ordered food and sat joking around all night, and when one of Taehee's college friends tried to talk to her, she completely ignored him, and when she got fed up, she asked him to shut up completely. At that time, Hyun's father passed by Suji's mother, and they talked about what happened, and that Suji discovered his relationship with the pottery shop owner, but he promised Suji's mother that he would not leave her and planned to make her one of the important managers in the company and his wife, and Taehee was completely out of it and not focused at all. So Lee went out, called Hyun, explained the situation to him, and asked him to come take her home, and Hyun stood still, then quickly went downstairs, and as soon as Hyun arrived, Lee pointed to Taehee's location, and indeed, he reached the place and took her with him to take her home, and he kept trying to convince her to get into the car with him. However, she refused and ran away from him, and he kept following her until he carried her on his shoulder. So she asked him about the reason he turned against her and asked him to let her go, and she got off his shoulder, and finally he took her home, let her rest, and noticed the injury on her hand. He remembered how she protected him and decided to treat her hand, cover her up, and apologize to her for everything he did with tears in his eyes. And when Taehee woke up, she found that several people called her, and she noticed that the bandage on her hand was changed. So she ran to Hun's house, found him getting out of the elevator, and ran after him on the stairs. And when his car outpaced her, she took a shortcut, stood in front of the car, got out, and asked him why he did that to her alone, why he did that to someone he did not want, and asked him if he really did not love her, why he gave her his mother's necklace. So he took a breath and told her that his mother was the one who hit her and ran away. And at that moment, she hesitated a bit, but she explained to him that it was not his fault and asked him to get back together. Later, Hun came, knocked on Taehee's door, asked her permission to speak with her for a bit, apologized from the bottom of his heart for what he did to her, and assured her that this matter would never happen again. And as soon as things cleared up between them, he talked to her about how he found his father's mistress and thought about going to meet her, and she asked him not to hurt her. We saw Mari studying until her mother asked her to try on a dress in front of Kim, and she kept telling her that this was the best and there was nothing like it, and Kim pressured her too, but Mari reached her limit with them and kept saying that she did not like it. And as soon as she ran away and her mother went after her, he approached Mari's brother and hit him, and when the boy talked back to him, he felt surprised by this family and sat down feeling frustrated. And the moment Hun arrived at the pottery shop, he met the woman his mother loved to draw, and naturally he got upset, and when she asked him what brought him, he did not drag things out, ruined the whole dinner, and explained to her that what happened to his mother, and also the girl who could have died, was her fault, and he left her and walked away. And before he got into the car, she ran after him and tried to apologize to him for everything that happened, but he got into the car without paying attention to her, and she remembered everything that happened that day, and how Hun's father did not answer her, and this made her explode at Taehee, and how ultimately she was indeed involved in everything. And at the same time, Taehee crossed the road and found a car almost hitting her, and we learned that the driver was Suji, and the situation condition Tae-hee was in, reminded her of the day of the accident, and how a white car exactly like Suji's almost hit her, so she fell to the ground from stress, and Suji stopped, looked at her, and drove away again without speaking to her. And when Han returned, he passed by his father's office and heard from him what happened and how Suji asked him to arrange her marriage with his son. But Hyun explained to him that he would not marry Suji and asked him to stick to the important matters and tell him about what happened on the day of his mother's death. And he blamed him for being the reason for everything that happened because he hid his mother's pottery shop. Naturally, the father felt surprised and did not understand what he was talking about. But Hyun left him and walked away. And we saw Hyun entering the hideout and finding his friends throwing a birthday party for him and preparing everything. And the moment they asked him to blow out the candles, he stayed silent for a bit while asking Suji about the words she said to his father while looking extremely furious. So she tried to explain her position, but he turned against her and fought with her. He assured her that if he were to marry, he would only marry Tae-hee. And in front of the hideout, he remembered their memories and how they used to be lovers and close friends. At night, Tae-hee stood waiting for Hyun, and when he approached with his car, she briefly remembered the day of the accident and that she found a sick woman in the car, left her, and ran away. But she ignored the thought, welcomed Hyun, and they sat walking in the nearby gardens for a bit until they decided to return home. At home, they both celebrated Hun's birthday, and he looked so happy that he cried out of joy. And at the time of making a wish, Hyun remembered his mother on his birthday, and to cheer Tae-hee up, she gave him a gift and asked him to open it in his apartment. And as soon as he entered, he opened it and found it filled with memories and pictures of the days they spent together. And he sat reminiscing about them for a bit. And before he slept, he called her and explained to her that he had to come with her to college tomorrow. And he decided to write her a long, detailed confession, telling her everything that happened behind her back. The next day, she woke up so they could do some exercises together. And they got into the car and went to college together. Suddenly, Suji appeared and saw them together. And without saying a word, she gave them a dirty look and walked away. Later, Hyun went to a family meeting, and there was Suji and her mother. He met his grandmother, welcomed her warmly, and they sat down to eat together. And the conversation went back and forth between Hyun and his grandmother until Suji's mother entered. And every time she said a word, the grandmother silenced her, and the grandmother wanted to speak with Suji's mother alone. But our girl, Suji, put her phone down and turned on the recorder to hear everything. And as soon as they left, the grandmother harshly criticized Suji's mother, left her, and walked away. And when the kids entered the room, they noticed that Suji's mother clearly looked sad, so Suji got upset for her mother and asked Hyun if their entire family consisted of people with no feelings. So he told her yes, exactly like her side of the family. And at that moment, he comforted her. She wanted to cry, but her pride did not allow it. And at the same time, Hyun's father passed by Tae-hee's mother and tried to talk to her, but she turned against him and made him understand that his son came to talk to her and made her feel guilty about everything she did. And at that moment, he had no reply on his tongue, so he left and got into his car, and it was clear that there was something wrong with his eyes. So he crashed into a light pole, and she ran to him to save him. And we saw Tae-hee's mother in the hospital talking to one of the nurses, and she called Hun, who was at Tae-hee's restaurant, and asked him to come quickly because of his father. And before he left, Tae-hee noticed Hun and joked with him, so he agreed with her to meet later. And in the hospital, Hyun stood with Tae-hee's mother, and she asked him to tell his father not to call her again. When he entered, he told his father that, and he was not focusing much, and asked him to go to him right now. And at the same time, Suji sat in Tae-hee's restaurant explaining to her the secret that Hyun refused to tell her, and she took advantage of Tae-hee's focus and explained to her that Hyun's father had a mistress, and it was her mother. Out of shock, Tae-hee became tongue-tied and could not speak, so Suji stood up and explained that her mother did not do anything wrong because whoever married and was happy with her would cheat on her. Very soon, at night, Hun returned his father to the company and called Tae-hee, but her phone was turned off, so he sent her messages, but they did not go through. And then he went crazy, quickly went to her workplace and asked about her, and when he found no reply, he left, got into his car, and Tae-hee stood behind him watching, but she did not speak to him at all. And we learned that this rush was so he could go to the hideout and talk to Suji, who explained to him that he had no right to fight with her, and that she tried to keep him away from her more than once. So Hyun got annoyed by her words, made it clear to Suji that their friendship was officially over, and left to look for Tae-hee at her house. But he did not find her, and we discovered that Tae-hee was at her college building trying in every way to avoid meeting Hyun. And later Hun sat with Lee talking about the hideout and that Lee wanted to get rid of it. So Hyun explained to him that it was impossible anyway for them to go back to how they were before. So Lee got angry at Hyun because of his excessive coldness regarding the matter. And then Kim appeared with Lee's brother and Mari's brother, and he started provoking poking Hyun, who annoyed Lee's brother so he would not lay a hand on him, and Kim kept talking about Suji and bothered both of them. So Lee could not control himself and tried to hit him, but his brother stopped him, and immediately Hyun intervened and hit him. The next day, in Hyun's father's office, we learned that the doctor explained to him that there was a problem in his brain, and this could be due to a tumor affecting his eyes and could also cause him problems there. And he decided to call Suji's mother and asked her to prepare an appointment for him to get checked. At the same time, Tae-hee was talking to her father and showing him the trees around her, but he held the phone and told her that there was something blocking the camera, and when she looked, she found Hun. So she hung up the call and heard him trying to soften her heart and asking her to get back together. But she explained to him that the matter became overly complicated and what they were doing was inappropriate, so she excused herself from him and walked away, and he remained standing watching her with his eyes full of tears until he also continued on his way. Hun went to the shop where she used to work and kept remembering her face while he drew her. And on the other side, she came out of college and found her mother waiting for her, wanting to check on her, but she swore multiple times to insult her mother, and she kept talking to her about how she destroyed her father's life and was now destroying her life, and she asked her to stay away from her and called Mari to assure her that she was on her way. And as soon as she entered the house, she found Kim there and realized that Mari's mother wanted to marry her off to Kim, so she ignored it and went up to continue tutoring Mari. Later, Kim stood with Tae-hee in a garden on the side and brought up Hyun, and that he was the one who caused the injury on his hand. So she told him that she had nothing to do with this matter and ran away. And we saw Hyun with his grandmother sitting in the office, and she tried to explain the difficult situation he was in after fighting with Kim, but Hyun could not control himself. He told her that he was not the legitimate son of the family, so she felt shocked and politely asked him not to tell anyone and to leave her presence right now. And on her way, she called a doctor and asked him for a favor. And in the company, Hyun met the family secretary and told her about his father and the tests he was undergoing. And in the hospital, Hyun passed by his father and found him asleep, so he left him to rest and walked away. And before leaving the hospital, he ran into Tae-hee, so he asked her what brought her, and she told him she was applying for student housing. He understood that she was grasping at anything to stay away from him, and he remembered when he cried in the hospital over his mother and apologized to Tae-hee because his mother hit her, and he told her that he knew the story from Suji's mother, which made her worry more. And the moment Hyun left, she called her aunt and asked her for details about the accident, but she did not get any useful answers from her. And as she left the hospital, someone fell down the stairs, and as soon as she went to look at him, Suji's mother appeared and examined him in a way that made Tae-hee remember that this was the exact same way she was examined when she had the accident before the owner of the car left her and ran away. And while things settled down and the doctors took the poor man out on a stretcher, and before Suji's mother left, Tae-hee grabbed her and asked her about the reason that made her not return to take her after causing the accident with her. Later, Tae-hee went up to Suji's mother's office, and we learned that the accident did not happen as was told, and that the truth was that Tae-hee was walking down the street and found Hun's mother unable to drive the car and barely breathing, so she quickly promised her to get her phone and call an ambulance. And on her way home, a car came and hit her, and that car belonged to Suji's mother. And when Suji's mother tried to defend herself, Tae-hee stopped her and told her that she was the reason for everything, and she asked her to apologize to Hyun and to everyone she caused harm to, and she assured her that she would not file a lawsuit because even if she filed one, it would not affect a person of her importance, and she walked out. At that moment, Suji's mother remembered everything that happened during that period, from the moment she hit her until she went up to check on her until she reached Hun's mother, and all the pressure made her lose control and keep crying. Amidst all this, Suji was walking up to her mother's office and noticed Tae-hee, and when she entered the office, she found her mother broken down and holding onto her tightly, so she connected the events together. And at that time, Tae-hee stepped aside while crying and called Hyun to meet him urgently, and as soon as they met, she told him that Suji's mother was the cause of what happened to her. And this made him upset because all this time, he had misjudged his mother, and he also felt relieved because his mother did not do something like that, and he immediately calmed Tae-hee down so she could breathe, and they sat thinking for a bit. And before Tae-hee left, Hyun offered to take her home because the atmosphere was tense and things were not safe, so she agreed and told him she would wait in the garage. And when she went down, Suji noticed her and went to talk to her, but Tae-hee did not see herself at fault and refused to say anything about what happened, and this made Suji angrier. And just as she was about to lay a hand on her, Hyun came to stop her and asked her to stay away from Tae-hee because she knew nothing, and he left her and walked away. And Suji restrained herself, got into the car and drove towards them quickly, but she stopped before hitting them, and this angered Hyun, so he moved towards her. But Tae-hee held him and asked him to focus on going home right now, and indeed he left her and drove away in the car. And the next day, Hyun called Suji's mother, asked to meet her, and went to the house. He asked her about the reason that made her lie to him, and as soon as she started giving excuses, Hyun interrupted her, and we learned that Suji stood listening to the conversation and discovered that her mother was the reason Hyun's mother left the hospital that day, and that she was the cause of Tae-hee's accident. And naturally, she could not believe it and remembered her behavior towards Tae-hee and kept crying. Later, Hyun went to his grandmother and learned from her that she did tests again and discovered that he was the legitimate son of the family, and she felt surprised by the paper Han spoke of. So Hyun understood the situation and explained to her that this must have been his mother's way of getting back at his father's betrayal. And before he left, he agreed with his grandmother to travel to America to continue his education. Thereafter, he finished some things, and at the college, Tae-hee stood and explained the project she was working on. In the middle of it, Hyun entered and watched her, and they kept looking at each other. And when the discussion of the project ended, Tae-hee went out to eat and found Hyun next to her, but she did not give him much of a chance to talk and got up. So he kept following her around like a bee everywhere until she got fed up with him and asked him to stop completely. So he remembered the first time they met, asked her permission to return home again, left her, and walked away. And indeed, Tae-hee decided to return home, and each of them entered their apartment and slept while thinking of each other. The next day, Hyun passed by his father in the hospital and explained to him that his mother hated sitting alone, so he sat with him, but his father asked him to do what he wanted and stay quiet. At the same time, it became clear that Mari could not stand Kim at all and stayed quiet until Kim went and bothered her brother, so she got angry and hit him, and they grabbed each other until Mari's mother intervened and de-escalated the situation. And before Kim left, he sat with the mother and warned her about her daughter's behavior. And we learned that Tae-hee's father returned from traveling and sat walking and joking with her, and he brought up her mother and asked her not to use his failed marriage with her mother as the end of the world and asked her to live her life. At night, Hyun stood alone until Tae-hee came. He took the opportunity and offered her to go out together for even just one day, and she agreed. And the next day, they went around everywhere together, took pictures, and ate together. At the same time, Lee sat in the hideout and found the things, and the camera they used while planning the plot against Tae-hee. And we saw Mari fighting with her mother and asking her to stay away from her, and she emphasized that she did not want to marry someone spiteful like him, and immediately her mother yelled at her and explained to her that they were a powerful family and would protect them, and she took Mari's brother and walked away. And at that moment, Mari decided to leave the house and run away completely. At the end of the day, Hyun returned with Tae-hee to the house, and before he went up, he told her that there was still something he needed to say and asked her to knock on his door if she was interested in knowing it. And as soon as he went up, we learned that he hid a notebook with pictures of her drawn in it and an apology containing everything that happened from the very beginning. And while he was immersed in his things, Lee knocked on his door and tried to reason with him and bring him back to the group, but Hun exploded at him and explained to him that everything between them was completely over. And the moment Lee walked away, he threatened Hun, and at that time, Tae-hee was in her room and found a message from Lee asking to meet her. And when she went down, she found him asking her to come with him to a hideout, and there he showed her that all this was originally a prank. And naturally, she saw the recordings and thought about what she did in her life to meet someone as problematic as Hun, and the goal of all this was to destroy his feelings just like he did with Suji. And Tae-hee could not bear it, stood up and tried to insult Lee through her tears, but he did not care. And the moment she walked out, he clearly looked regretful, but he went back to looking at their pictures together and tried to get her back. And when Tae-hee walked down the stairs, she could not carry herself and fell down. And as soon as she found Hun calling her, the building security guard decided to answer the call. And Hun arrived quickly and found Tae-hee unable to speak, so he tried to understand from her what happened, and she exploded at him and kept insulting because of the deception he committed, and he could not hold back his tears and asked her for one more chance. But our heroine frowned at him and asked him to stay away from her. At that moment, he decided to go up to Lee and fight with him, and before the matter got more out of control, he restrained himself, and Lee could not take it anymore, so he left him and walked away, and Hun remained alone crying. And at that time, Tae-hee decided to return to her mother's house again, and as soon as she entered, her mother supported her and took her inside the apartment. And the next day, Hyun went and sat with Suji's mother, who explained to him that she would all her focus on his father's surgery and asked him to be patient until his father recovered. And we saw Mari's mother having a headache. Her condition was terrible, and she did not know what she should do until Kim came in and reassured her that he would look for her daughter everywhere And in the hospital, Hun sat on his father's bed, and Suji entered and tried to talk to him normally, but he asked her what would have happened if the three of them had never met and how things would have been better. He left her thinking and walked away, and Tae-hee stayed at her mother's house until her father came and made her get in the car with him so they could return closer to the college again. And he talked about how he did not hate her mother. On the contrary, he loved her despite everything she did to him and despite her betrayal of him. At the same time, Kim was with Mari's mother and her brother, and the mother clearly looked worried, and she remembered her daughter's words about Kim's spiteful and malicious thinking, and she saw him laying a hand on her son, so she got angry at him and broke off the engagement. Later, Tae-hee sat with Shama and found Mari's mother calling her and explaining to her that her daughter was kidnapped, so she promised her that she would call her, and when she did that, she found her number unavailable and felt surprised. And at Hyun's house, he found workers taking Tae-hee's belongings to be shipped, and when he spoke to them, a call from the family secretary interrupted him, and we learned that his father finished the surgery and offered him to come visit him tomorrow. And at night, Kim called Mari's brother and asked him to come with him to the address he would send, and as soon as he met him, he asked him not to be afraid, and the friend, who was Lee's brother, clearly looked like he came for a fight, and we discovered that Mari and her boyfriend sat in our group's hideout joking around until they heard a knocking sound, and when her boyfriend got up to open the door, Lee's brother attacked him and hit him in the head, and Lee's brother and Kim sat talking while leaving Mari's injured boyfriend, and out of fear, her brother bumped into something on the wall, and the moment Kim approached to see whose hand it was, he found it containing the entire plan that Tae-hee followed regarding him, and suddenly Lee entered and asked his brother to leave the people there alone, and that he would explain everything, but Kim ordered him to listen to his words and make them tie him up, and immediately Lee tried to hit him, but his brother was the one who hit him. At the same time, Hyun was in the hospital, and his phone rang, and the moment he looked, he remembered Lee's caller ID and discovered that it was Kim with him, and he provoked him to come save his friend. And indeed, Hyun reached the place, but found Mari tied up, and he agreed with Kim to let Mari, her brother, and her boyfriend out of the place. And when they got out, Mari called Tae-hee and asked her to come save them before a disaster happened. Kim took advantage of the opportunity and kept hitting Hyun because he knew he would not hit back for the sake of his friend Lee, and it became clear how Kim could not affect Hyun with a single blow. So he turned on the camera and let Lee's brother finish the job, and Lee's brother hit him with a first, second, and third blow. And when he felt that it was too much, he asked Kim to calm down a bit, so Kim explained to him that he would be the one to finish this matter. And suddenly, Tae-hee called Kim, and when he showed Hun the call, Hyun could not control himself and continued fighting with Kim. And in the end, Lee's brother intervened, and this gave an opportunity to Kim. Kim answered Tae-hee, and she tried to calm the situation down, but she realized that Kim was blinded by rage, so she quickly ran to the hideout. There, Tae-hee found Hun severely beaten, so she asked him about what happened, and Kim immediately spoke nonsense to make himself look like a man of principles. He claimed he did not cause trouble, so Tae-hee untied Hun and secretly called the police. And when Hun stood up, Kim knocked him down again, so Tae-hee warned him that she called the police. And at that moment, Lee's brother entered and ordered her to hand over the phone, but Hyun stopped Lee's brother for a while, and Kim ignored him and focused on the phone and demanded it from her. And when Tae-hee fell to protect the phone, Hyun went back to Kim and tried to stop him, but Kim grabbed a golf club and tried to hit Hyun with it, so Hyun took the blow instead of her and collapsed motionless on the ground. And Kim and Lee's brother quickly escaped, while Tae-hee kept trying to wake Hyun up. Lee stood up to help his friend, and they quickly went to the hospital, where Hyun entered the operating room, and fear and anxiety clearly appeared on Tae-hee. And the next day, Mari returned to her mother, who scolded her slightly, but assured her that she was the most precious thing to her, and that she broke off the engagement with Kim. And Suji sat in her room until she received a call from Lee and learned what happened. So she ran to the hospital, entered the room where Lee and Tae-hee sat, and kept crying until Lee took her outside the room. And when Suji's mother returned home, she heard the sound of running water, and as soon as she entered, she found her daughter on the ground with glass everywhere. So she quickly went to save her, and later we saw Suji in the hospital with Lee beside her after he brought her flowers. And the next day, Tae-hee met with Shama and officially decided to travel with her father, and she assured Shama that she would definitely return. And when Tae-hee went to Hun's house, she noticed her portrait drawn on the glass window, and she remembered the sweet days they shared. And as she walked around the house, she found the gift Hun prepared to apologize to her. And in the hospital, Hun's grandmother sat with his father and told him that his son was in the hospital next to him right now, and that the document his first wife gave him was a lie, and Hyun was his real son. So the father visited his son while remembering his final days with his wife and how she tried to hide her pain. And amidst all this, Tae-hee arrived and refused to enter the room to avoid avoid ruining the family atmosphere. And later, she sat with Hyun all night talking to him and wishing he would reply to her. And then she read the notebook he made for her, and she found hand-drawn pictures of herself inside it, along with all the things she never knew about and endless apologies. So she begged him to wake up again. And the next day, Tae-hee returned to the hospital with Shama and found a gathering inside the room. And because Tae-hee felt afraid, she sent Shama to Lee, and Shama went and discovered that Hun woke up. Shama informed Tae-hee and encouraged her to enter, but the two decided to stay away. And in the end, Tae-hee left the place and walked away, and Shama went out and gave some flowers to Hun and told him that Tae-hee stayed beside him the entire time, and this was her final gift. So Hun kept crying, and we saw Tae-hee standing with her father, who tried to make her greet her mother before traveling. And indeed, she went, greeted her, and said goodbye to her. 5 years later, Tae-hee sat in her office, working and talking with her manager about a project, explaining that she did not want to take on the work requested under her name, but the manager assured her that it was not his decision and that the client requested her specifically, so she reluctantly agreed. And then her mother called and invited her to her exhibition. But Tae-hee hesitated a bit and told her she was quite busy, and before she finished her sentence, her mother thanked her for the flowers. Tae-hee felt surprised and asked about the flowers, and immediately her manager brought a flower bouquet and told her that it arrived for her as a gift. And at night, she sat writing a message to the owner of the house she planned to inspect, assuring him that she would come. And the next day, Tae-hee went to the location of the house and looked at it from afar. And when she entered and looked around the house, she found paintings of places she knew very well, and she remembered her days with Hun, so she decided to go up to the roof to look around. And there she actually found Hun waiting for her, and he told her that he missed her very much. So she asked him about the reason he delayed for 5 years, and he explained to her that he did not want to talk to her while she still held a grudge against him or felt upset. And here our summary ended. Thank you to everyone who stayed with me until the very end of this recap, and goodbye.